Good evening and welcome to our special coverage of the Canadian federal election, an evening that shapes the future of our nation. I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen, and together with Chris Creamer, we're going to navigate the issues, the platforms, and the promises that have been resonated with Canadians from coast to coast. Tonight is not just about the numbers, it's about the choices we face together as a country. Over the past few weeks, we've seen candidates articulate their visions on topics that matter to everyday life: affordable housing, healthcare, and environment. Of course, the economy is important as well, and these issues have been sparked in debates at kitchen tables, workplaces, and town halls across Canada. As we watch the results unfold, we'll explore how these discussions translate into the seats that will shape the next government. Our program is dedicated to bringing you timely updates, thoughtful analysis, and conversations with experts who have been following this election closely. Whether you're tuning in for the results in your local riding or interested in the broader national picture, we're here to keep you informed every step of the way. Before we begin, on behalf of our network and Rogers TV, I'd like to express our sincere condolences at the tragic events that happened in Vancouver on Saturday. There are no words that would express the sympathy that we feel, and that's shared by everyone in Canada. We're better than that. Our thoughts and prayers are with you all. Chris, welcome. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Jonathan. It feels like just yesterday we were here for the provincial election.
It's hard to believe it's been 2 months.
2 whole months, 60 days. Maybe we should have an election every 2 months. What do you think?
Sure. We did have some big issues when we did a provincial election. Tariffs were just on the horizon and so forth. But since then, it has been a ridiculously complex election. The thing that I find very interesting is that there hasn't been that slamming of each other, the candidates and so forth. Everybody's more unified against one sort of issue that we have just south of the border, and that's a very, very good thing. We're going to take a look back in time. We're going to take a trip back to give you an idea of what the prime ministers of this country did, how they were formed, and where they're from. So let's roll that right now, shall we?
John Alexander Macdonald was Prime Minister from July 1st, 1867 to November 5th, 1873. He spent 2,320 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Conservative. Alexander Mackenzie was Prime Minister from November 7th, 1873 to October 8th, 1878. He spent 1,797 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. John A. Macdonald came back as Prime Minister on October 17th, 1878 to June 6th, 1891. He spent 4,616 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Conservative. John Joseph Caldwell Abbott was Prime Minister from June 16th, 1891 to November 24th, 1892. He spent 528 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Conservative. John Sparrow David Thompson was Prime Minister from December 5th, 1892 to December 12th, 1894. He spent 738 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Conservative. Mackenzie Bowell was Prime Minister from December 21st, 1894 to April 27th, 1896. He spent 494 days in office. Political affiliation, Conservative. Charles Tupper was Prime Minister from May 1st to July 8th, 1896. He spent 69 days in office. Political affiliation, Conservative. Wilfrid Laurier was Prime Minister from July 11th, 1896 to October 10th, 1911. He spent 5,565 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Robert Laird Borden was Prime Minister from October 10th, 1911 to July 9th, 1920. He spent 3,196 days in office. Political affiliation, Unionist. Arthur Meehan was Prime Minister from July 10th, 1920 to December 28th, 1921. He spent 537 days in office. Political affiliation, Unionist. William Lyon Mackenzie King was Prime Minister from December 29th, 1921 to June 28th, 1926. He spent 1,643 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Arthur Meehan came back as Prime Minister in June 29th to September 24th, 1926. He spent 88 days in office. Political affiliation, Conservative. William Lyon Mackenzie King came back as Prime Minister on September 25th, 1926 to July 6, 1930. He spent 1,412 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Richard Bedford Bennett was Prime Minister from July 7, 1930 to October 22, 1935. He spent 1,903 days in office. Political affiliation, Conservative. William Lyon Mackenzie King came back again as Prime Minister on October 23, 1935 to November 14, 1948. He spent an additional 4,772 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Louis Stevens St. Laurent was Prime Minister from November 15, 1948 to June 20, 1957. He spent 3,140 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. John George Diefenbaker was Prime Minister from June 21, 1957 to April 21, 1963. He spent 2,131 days in office. Political affiliation, Progressive Conservative Party. Lester Bowles Pearson was Prime Minister from April 22, 1963 to April 19, 1968. He spent 1,825 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Pierre Elliott Trudeau was Prime Minister from April 20th, 1968 to June 3rd, 1979. He spent 4,062 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Charles Joseph Clark was Prime Minister from June 4th, 1979 to March 2nd, 1980. He spent 273 days in office. Political affiliation, Progressive Conservative Party. Pierre Elliott Trudeau came back as Prime Minister in March 3rd, 1980 to June 29, 1984. He spent an additional 1,580 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. John Turner was Prime Minister from June 30th to September 16th, 1984. He spent 79 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Brian Mulroney was Prime Minister from September 17, 1984 to June 24, 1993. He spent 3,203 days in office. Political affiliation, Progressive Conservative Party. Kim Campbell was Prime Minister from June 25th to November 3rd, 1993. She spent 132 days in office. Political affiliation, Progressive Conservative Party. Jean Chrétien was Prime Minister from November 4th, 1993 to December 11th, 2003. He spent 3,690 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Paul Martin was Prime Minister from December 12th, 2003 to February 5th, 2006. He spent 787 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Stephen Harper was Prime Minister from February 6, 2006 to November 3, 2015. He spent 3,558 days in office. Political affiliation, Progressive Conservative Party. Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister from November 4, 2015 to March 13, 2025. He spent 3,418 days in office. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Mark Carney became Prime Minister March 14, 2025. Political affiliation, Liberal Party of Canada. Who will be the next Prime Minister of Canada? Will it be Mark Carney of the Liberal Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party of Canada, Jagmeet Singh of the New Democratic Party, Jonathan Pedno with Elizabeth May of the Green Party of Canada?
Great. That was really quite interesting about the prime ministers. I've actually been around for quite a few of them, more than I care to remember. So we have our first guest tonight with us is the Honorable Todd McCarthy, who's the Minister of the Environment, Parks, and, let me flip my page here, Conservation and Parks. Minister McCarthy, welcome.
Good to see you again, Jonathan. Glad to be on the show.
You know Chris.
I know Chris. Good to
Nice
see you, Chris.
again,
Yeah, absolutely.
Minister McCarthy.
You bet.
You were sworn in as Ontario's Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks just last month. Congratulations.
That's right. Thank you.
What have you learned during your brief time in this new role, and what are some of your priorities as you get started?
Well, when it comes to the Environment Ministry, I was able to hit the ground running on March the 19th when the new cabinet was sworn in for the 44th Parliament, because I was the acting Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks from late August to late January. Given Minister Kanjan's leave of absence for her parental leave or her maternity leave. So I had 5 months sort of as a dress rehearsal for the job now that I've had for just about 5 or 6 weeks. So what have I learned?
Yeah.
Is how much people do not realize how proud we should be in Ontario about our track record on conservation and parks and the protection of the environment. You know, Ontario leads the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for Canada. We're responsible for 86% or more of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. We have the Greenlands Project, which is responsible for the preservation and enhancement of much green space in Ontario, from the Bruce Trail to the Boreal Wildlands. Right here in Durham, of course, we've got the new Uxbridge Urban Park. We have the Nonquan Wildlife Reserve in Port Perry. We have beautiful Darlington Park by the lake in Clarington, 209 hectares for families and campers. It's a fantastic track record. And what we have done in terms of protecting the environment, doing our part to fight climate change, our recycling program, all kinds of innovation in waste diversion is part of our track record, and I'm very proud of that. So my only surprise is how many Ontarians don't realize how well we're doing in terms of our environmental record.
And your riding that you represent is full of beautiful natural spaces, that's for sure.
It sure is. Yeah. It sure is. Well, as I always say, you know, Chris, that Durham riding in the east end of Durham region is like a microcosm of Ontario, right? We definitely have lots of green space. We have traditional subdivisions in the south part of the riding. We have farms. We have the Darlington nuclear facility as well. We've got the 401 and the 407, and the GO train is coming to Bowmanville in the very near future. So lots to be proud of here.
Absolutely.
If I can just interject, I'm curious because you have a good balance between environmentally friendly areas and housing, and it's a constant battle back and forth. How do you see the future in that area? Like, what do you have to do to make sure that people do have houses, but there's still places for people to enjoy the outdoors?
Well, it is about balance, Jonathan, as you suggest. That's the plan and the vision of Premier Ford and our team at Queen's Park going forward. We can be and we must be strong stewards of our environment because we all breathe the same air and we rely on clean drinking water and we rely on open green spaces. But we also can build the Ontario of tomorrow, and that includes building houses that are attainable for everyone, whether it's a young couple starting out, whether it's seniors who want to downsize, whether it's condominiums, townhouses, larger detached homes. We want to build transit-oriented communities. That's what the GO train extension of Bowmanville is all about, Jonathan, is the idea of gentle intensification around the GO train. Right. Because so many of our fellow citizens, you know, they are educated locally here at Durham College or at Ontario Tech or Trent University, or they commute to work in downtown Toronto or elsewhere in the 905. Many work locally here. So that idea of being able to become maybe a one-car family, right, because you have access to public transit to go within the community and elsewhere, that's a key part of balancing growth responsibly.
I'm going to take it back a bit to your previous portfolio. When you were Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery, you introduced legislation about cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Are there concerns about that? Like, should we be concerned about that cyber security or insecurity infiltrating everyday life?
Well, we do have to be concerned about it. That's why I'm very proud that our government last year in 2024 introduced the first of its kind type legislation to do with regulating and defining artificial intelligence in the public sector, in the broader public sector, and also regulating cybersecurity and defining it in the public sector, in the broader public sector, and in relation to the private sector that does business with government. So that's Bill 194. The Strengthening Cybersecurity Act was a very important initiative. Other provinces and territories have looked at it, and I believe they'll follow our example. It's a very important piece of legislation, but I'm optimistic. Yes, we have to put up guardrails, especially for our children. So we led with the protection of children when it came to AI cybersecurity initiatives. That means our first iteration of it revolves around school boards, children's aid societies, and hospitals. But it'll be scoped going forward to include municipalities. And at the same time, we have the Cybersecurity of Excellence, which is available for all, the Cybersecurity Learning Portal. So we have to put up guardrails to protect children when it comes to cybersecurity and AI use. But at the same time, we should embrace this new technology optimistically.
Okay.
You've had a long career in the legal field. almost like a family business, I believe.
Yeah. Don't hold being a lawyer against me, by the way.
I won't.
Lawyers and politicians, you know. But anyway, but everybody loves their individual lawyer and their
Right.
individual politician, I find. So that's,
Okay.
I go with that. That makes me feel better.
Well, in your career in this field, have you been able to use your experience from it? You were also a deputy judge, too.
I
right?
was a deputy judge for
And a
9
trial
years
lawyer,
before,
yeah.
and a trial lawyer, that's right. Well, there's no question. I mean, members of provincial parliament and members of parliament are legislators, and so having the lawyer skill set definitely helps in terms of being part of the debates in the House, being on committees, actually being involved in the input on the drafting of the legislation. You know, often when I'm asked questions about a particular bill, whether it's a journalist or an individual citizen, they often ask about a commentary about the legislation. And I say, well, let's talk about the bill itself, because being a lawyer, I read bills for a living, I read legislation for a living. And you've got to say, well, look at how Section 32 of our new Bill 5 compares to Section 23 of the old Species at Risk Act. The new Species Conservation Act is actually stronger. It has the most significant and newest powers to ensure strict compliance, because it allows our 200 environmental officers across Ontario to go into any site to make sure that they can gather the evidence to protect the species and to issue compliance orders and mitigation orders against those few bad actors that would harm species. So the investigative powers are stronger than ever under our Act. But some people have read commentaries suggesting there's been a change for the worse, and in fact it's a change for the better. But you have to read the legislation and talk about what's actually in the bill to have that discussion in a fair way.
And that's where your legal expertise
That's
comes
right.
in.
Happy to talk on that basis, for sure. Yeah.
So before we let you go, I need to know what your message is for the people of Durham, regardless of the outcome of the election.
Well, I think it's optimism, Jonathan. I think that we faced one of the most existential threats to our province, to our country, in the last few months from one individual who leads the current presidential administration. Americans are our friends and our neighbors, and they will continue to be so. But I think that where one individual made threats against us, you saw the leadership of Premier Ford as the chair of the Council of the Federation. You saw people rise up with the elbows up theme. Ontarians and Canadians are proud to be Canadians, to be independent, to be sovereign. And I think that produced optimism for me in the face of one of the most existential threats. But remember that participation in the political process is important, so voting is a minimal part of that. But I encourage all young people of whatever vocation they may decide to enter to consider a time in elected office, to make that contribution, whether it's school board, council, municipal council, provincial or federal politics, as a parliamentarian, and even people, you know, midlife who may want to look at a different career change. Consider running for office. I didn't start as a parliamentarian in my 20s or 30s. Right. I was elected for the first time in my 50s. So although I did serve a time on school board as an elected official in my 20s. So optimism and participation, and we're all in this together. So Absolutely. Let's have each other's backs.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time from your schedule. I know you're very busy. Do appreciate you very much coming down here today and sharing your information with us, your insights, which is very much appreciated. And I guess we'll see you next week at the VE celebrations in north part of the
yes, the 80th
region.
Anniversary of Victory in Europe.
That's right.
I look forward to joining you, Jonathan. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. Our next guest is Jennifer French, the MPP for Oshawa, and we're going to ask her all about her views on the federal relationship with the her riding and the federal government. Ms. French. Good evening. Our first guest tonight is the Member of Provincial Parliament for Oshawa, MPP Jennifer French. MPP French, welcome to our live broadcast of the election. How exciting tonight is.
Thank you for having me.
I've got a couple questions for you because you've been in this for quite a while. As a matter of fact, you've been doing this since 2014. So what have you learned about our community and the overall political process during your time as MPP?
Well, Oshawa is a dynamic community. Yes, ever-changing, but also we have always been resilient and tough, a little bit scrappy, but we are growing and we are getting better as we do that, whether it's because of industry, because of education, whether that's because of the community heart and fight. But Oshawa is a tremendous place to live. It's a tremendous place to represent. So in terms of the politics, it is interesting because we're the land of Ed Broadbent with deep labor roots. But when I took the seat in 2014, I took it from a 19-year Conservative. So we have been this two-horse race town in terms of NDP and Conservative for a long time. And I think folks are very interested in fairness. I think that they're very interested in working together for their neighbors. Yeah.
With the federal election tonight, what are some of the key issues at the federal level that you've been hearing from residents in your riding?
Okay, well, I've had the opportunity during the federal election to talk to folks at the doors, to talk to them out in the community. And I think everyone, and this may have started actually during the provincial election, people are very nervous about the uncertainty that comes with tariffs. A lot of people have become, I won't say experts, but certainly invested in that conversation and what that will mean for us as a community, for themselves as workers, for their neighbors. So tariffs, the uncertainty in the United States, the instability, what that will mean, yes, for automotive, but also just for everyone who's buying groceries, for people living and trying to get by in the community. So that has been a part of what I've heard. But really, after that conversation, the next one is often what it's like interacting with our services. You know, if people can't find a family doctor, wait times at hospitals, and healthcare often feels provincial. But of course, the feds have responsibility to be keeping a keen eye to guard against privatization, which we have seen, and the dental care, the pharmacare, like these are big wins for people, which of course were, NDP priorities federally. And so I think people are interested in making sure that whatever comes, whoever the next government is, that their family is still going to have the support that they would need, whether that's in the face of tariffs and what comes next for supporting workers and families, or if that's just in the day-to-day, making sure that healthcare, education, community supports, all of that the federal government continues to show leadership in those areas.
Given Oshawa's role in the Canadian auto industry, what kind of federal support do you think is needed right now to keep the sector strong, not only with the shift towards electrical vehicles, but also with the ongoing tariffs from the U.S.?
Well, there are a lot of moving parts, and literally a lot of moving parts when it comes to the supply chain and the automotive sector. When there was the initial threat of tariffs looming and the uncertainty that went with it, it has been quite remarkable to be this many weeks beyond that and see that that there is real potential for things to go badly. But the longer that we have been in this uncertainty, we have seen that General Motors is still here in our community, building an award-winning, fantastic product in the Silverado. It's one of their best sellers. They have to know that. We know that. We're proud of it. But we seem like the sure bet right now, as we see such instability in the States. I'm ever the optimist, so I am hoping that that cooler heads will prevail and that we will be able to continue to build an excellent product with a skilled and an excellent workforce here in our community. Hope isn't necessarily all that is needed, though. We need all players from all levels of government and with industry, with the trade unions at the table to actually make sure we don't miss anything, that we are strategic as we move. I would also add that one of the things that makes us, or among the things that make us competitive globally, is that we have an educated, skilled, healthy workforce. Any companies that are looking at the United States, separate and apart from the volatility, they'll have to factor in, higher wages, benefits, things like that. So when we have healthcare here that corporations factor into their investment, we need to safeguard that. We also need to strengthen it. So again, for the feds to really recognize that our healthcare system, education, that they have to show leadership and they have to hold the provinces to account to make sure that we don't lose that competitive edge.
And a follow-up, what kind of impact do you think those tariffs would have on jobs and the industry in Oshawa?
I think, like everyone else, I am worried and I have concerns, and I imagine what if the worst were to happen. I don't think the worst will happen, but absolutely people will be affected, that there will be negative impacts. But I also see innovation and resilience, and I see where we can develop supply chains. And I don't only mean automotive, I mean across the board. We see small business connecting with other small businesses. That's where government could come in and help. Much like we saw in the pandemic, the government came in and helped people pivot to online from storefront. So here we're needing to connect smaller businesses with each other with different operations, whether that's fabrication, whether that's help with design, to solidify the potential here and develop supply chains that heretofore were not existing. Those will be success stories. And I think when it comes to jobs, that may take some time, but everyone is wanting their neighbors to stay employed. I think if we're given the opportunity to not only buy local, but to know what is made, designed, built by our neighbors, we're going to come together, because we always do. And so I think that that's going to be part of the strategy, is giving people those tools.
MPP French, you've worked very closely with labor groups and auto workers over the years. When you bring the stories and concerns to Queen's Park, what kind of support are you hoping to see from the federal government?
I think the federal government, of course, my arena is provincial, and we've seen the Premier say that he wants to work across the aisle, and so that remains to be seen whether that happens. But at this point, I think we are all wanting to improve and strengthen our province. Every province is saying that same thing. So there are going to be opportunities for the federal government to show leadership when it comes to interprovincial opportunities, some of the barriers, but also some potential, things that have not yet been imagined, not just things that are in the way, but things that haven't happened. That's where I'd like to see the federal government listen carefully. The stories from people in the community are probably going to be echoed across others. Oshawa is unique in many ways, but also this is a shared experience that we're all in. And so I think whoever is our next representative here in Oshawa better be a fighter on our behalf on Parliament Hill, and be a voice that takes the stories, takes the lived experience, and takes the good ideas and expertise. It's not only about sharing concerns, it's about sharing ideas, because we've got them here.
Would you be able to provide us with an update on the expansion of the GO Transit line into Oshawa and the eastern portion of Durham Region?
So I have had the opportunity provincially to serve as the official opposition critic for infrastructure transportation, and have certainly had eyes on, for the last 11 years, that Bowmanville GO train extension. I think we're coming up on the 35-year anniversary from when it was first announced this year. But again, ever the optimist. I do know that Metrolinx has kept me in the loop, that they are doing surveys and that they are pulling out trees. I don't know any kind of timeline. I do know that the region had to step up with a creative solution to help fund and pay for the actual station infrastructure, because the province has gotten out of the business of building public rail stations and paying for it. Well, building, yes, paying for, no. So the region is looking for guidance from the province to be able to start moving forward on that. So being an optimist, it hasn't stopped, but I don't know any kind of timeline, and I have to say it, I will believe it when I see it, but I do know that there are people working in earnest to continue moving this project forward.
There's always going to be a need for strong collaboration between the federal government and the provincial governments. From where you sit at Queen's Park, what does a good collaboration between governments look like?
What does good collaboration look like? I think that it has to be open, and it has to be for a clear purpose. So I think, with some of the partisan divides or the personalities of the players involved, all of that aside, I think when it has been for that common purpose, like right now, we want to ensure that workers can keep their jobs, that if the worst were to happen in the face of the tariffs, that there's an income replacement, or that if people lose their jobs, that they won't then lose their homes. Like, these are big issues that I don't think are partisan. Like, I think that all levels of government are going to have to put any differences aside and figure out how we move forward to address some of these. And so I think collaboration is going to be issue-based, because then things will get done. I think housing is going to be one of the biggest, that they'd better get their ducks in a row. Provincially, we as a party have been calling for the government to get back into the business of building homes. And that was ridiculed, but that was also before the change in the landscape and the relationship between the states and Canada. So now that the feds are also talking about, a big initiative when it comes to housing, more like a wartime effort, which is what the NDP's been calling for a long time, I think we'll see some of the partisan pieces fall away, because people are going to need safe and affordable places to live. And that may be the first opportunity for all levels to collaborate. But I think that shared goal of ensuring that all Canadians have what they need to live and work in their community, and not just make ends meet, but, make it, we need to make our community stronger, and I think all of us see that right now.
And lastly, MPP French, what's your message to the people of Oshawa who might be feeling a little uncertain about what comes next after tonight's election?
What would I say to people who are feeling uncertain about what comes next? I would say me too. I think all of us spend too much time, glued to our screens and seeing like the things that are changing so rapidly in our world. I continue to have hope that the world will keep turning, that, we will get through this. I am heartened by the conversations that I have been having at the doors during this campaign, and frankly, during the provincial campaign. Partisan pieces aside, people want our community to do well. They want their neighbors to do well, right? They want people to have what they need. So I'm heartened by our sense of community, and the the optimism that is just kind of percolating. But right now, I think everyone is overwhelmed about the potential of what comes next. I think whoever forms government has an important job to bring Canadians not only together, but to move us forward together. We see a lot of division, and I think that's a big part, is to bring Canadians together. We have to stop dividing first. And so I hope that the next government makes that a priority, to stop running down, services and workers, and to start building us up.
Thank you very much, MPP French. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight and giving us some very insightful information, not just about your riding, but about the government in general. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next, we're going to go over to Chris Creamer, who is joined by the Liberal MPP for Ajax, Mr. Rob Serjanik. Chris? So, are you in
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I like so.
Thank you, MPP Serjanik, for joining us here. First of all, congratulations on your victory just 2 months ago, almost 2 months ago today,
Yep.
almost. What has the experience at Queen's Park been like so far, stepping into this new role Have there been any surprises, things you didn't expect?
So it's interesting. The day after the election, you get a phone call from the legislature and they say, congratulations, now we need to get some information from you. You start already. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but exciting nonetheless. There definitely feels a weight on your shoulders of all the folks that you interacted with during the campaign and the issues that people are dealing with. You know, people are struggling to access health care. People are struggling with the education system, cost of living, affordability. So right away, that stuff kind of hits you like a brick wall. You know? All right, what am I going to do? How am I going to go out and try and help folks succeed?
You suddenly remember all those people you talked to, and now I
Absolutely.
actually have to go out and do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the key issues? We kind of already touched on this, but maybe we can go more in depth that you've been hearing about from Ajax residents, whether it's provincial or federal, while you were running and since you've been elected.
There's definitely a lot of overlap, and I'll actually talk about somebody that I met today. She came to my constituency office, and her mother has been in the emergency room now for the last 3 days. You know, waiting for a bed, waiting to get the care that she needs. And you know, the healthcare workers, they're doing their best. They're doing what they can, but the healthcare system's straining. So that's something that I heard a lot about during the provincial campaign. And in addition, affordability, cost of living, getting around the region. So there's some things that I think that we can do right now. We can cut taxes for the middle class. We can take the small business tax rate and cut that in half in order to help folks right now get an immediate relief. And things like the 407. Taking tolls off the provincially owned portion of the 407. That's something the provincial government can do today in order to help folks get around the region and save a little bit of money.
It's interesting you mentioned the 407. You certainly have a reputation for not letting any moss grow under your feet because you hit the ground running pretty hard. You want to take the tolls off the 407.
Correct.
Which obviously is great for people who use it. But what does it mean on the big picture? Like somebody has to pay for this road, the maintenance for it, and so forth.
Absolutely. So in 2021, I think the estimate of tolls on the 407 East, so the provincially owned portion, so that goes from Brock Road all the way out to the 35-115, would be approximately $72 million or so. Now, folks might remember this was a commitment that Premier Ford made during the provincial election campaign. And all I'm saying is don't delay. Do it now. There's a simple regulatory change that the province can do in order to do that. And I was at a manufacturing company last week on Friday, and they do deliveries all throughout Durham Region and trying to expand within Durham Region. And taking the tolls off the 407 would help them move their goods faster. And then it would also help some of their workers as well be able to get into the job site.
And how's it going? How's the process? Like, what's your feel on it?
Well, we haven't received a response yet from the province.
Okay.
I hope they're going to heed that call to do that quickly.
Right.
There's actually a road construction project that's taking place in the Brooklyn area of Whitby right now on Winchester. It's going to be closed until the end of the year or so, and that's going to cause some pain for folks in that area and also folks traveling through. So we're saying don't delay. You made that commitment. Do it now. And I think it's one way I think that the provincial government can reach across the aisle, so to say, and work with an opposition MPP to make life better and easier for folks.
Okay. You recently met with some business owners to discuss the impact of tariffs and the economic uncertainty that's taking place. And I'm sure everybody's concerned,
Yes.
right? It's a very concerning time. What stood out as the most urgent needs that business owners have?
Hearing the need for predictability. Right now, they're struggling in terms of purchasing from other suppliers and people purchasing from them. So that's something that I heard is the need for predictability. And that's something that, you know, we have a federal election taking place today. So hopefully with whoever forms the next federal government, they'll be able to provide a little bit more of that broader certainty. But there is another way that we can help those businesses right now, making it more affordable for them. So what we can do is cut the small business tax rate in half. The Ontario portion, it's 3.2%. We can cut that to 1.6 right now. And for a small business, you know, at the top end of that, that's $18,000 back to them that they can invest in their workers or product or deal with the cost escalation that they're dealing with.
Okay. One of your key priorities is making life more affordable, and I get taking the tolls off the highway will help that, but it's not going to put a lot of food on people's tables. No. So what other things are in place or would you like to put in place that will help people have more money to spend?
Absolutely. You know, absolutely the tolls was one piece, but we can also cut middle taxes for the middle class. That's something that we as Ontario Liberals spoke about during the provincial campaign. If we think back to 2018, Premier Ford, they made a commitment to do a tax cut. That hasn't happened. So that's something that the budget's coming up in May. It's an opportunity, I think, for this government to really listen and understand that the issues that people are facing, especially around affordability, and they could do a tax cut, and that will help people greatly and immediately.
Okay, thank you. Chris, you wanted to switch gears on the next question, right?
Yeah, and I have to confess, I was creeping your Instagram page. I was doing some research. I was being a pro.
Absolutely.
You shared a very personal reflection recently on the passing of Pope Francis.
Yes.
You attended a mass he presided at the Vatican, I believe it was on New Year's Eve.
It was, yep.
How did such an experience like that really inspire or shape your perspective on public service?
So I had the opportunity to attend that Mass and had the opportunity to see the Pope in front of me right after. He was going around St. Peter's Square, and I was there with a friend, and there were some nuns in front of me. And they managed to grab his attention, and just seeing that kind of moment of joy in his face and moving towards them. But when I think of his service as Pope, and frankly, throughout his entire life, focusing it on people and being the voice for those that don't have a voice, and that humility and not looking about money or status or power or anything, but using that position that he had. Being MPP is a little bit of a different than being Pope, I guess. But using the position that I have as well to help people and to be their voice.
Nice. Okay. So you've spoken a lot about building partnerships and bringing people together.
Yep.
As you look ahead to your first full year of MPP coming up, what are your top goals you hope to accomplish as MPP for Ajax?
Well, it'd be great to get the tolls off the 407, number one. But, the hospital in Ajax, that's something that is a concern for folks. So I would really like to be able to work with the hospital, but also, work with the provincial government and how can we get resources into there faster so that we can have better patient care. That means also expanding family doctors. I think that's something that we can work quite well and collaboratively on. And something else that I heard a lot during the campaign, but after, is homelessness. And there's some really great organizations within Ajax that are serving the unhoused, and also preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. So I'd like to be able to work with them more and encourage the province to step up just a little bit more in order to help these organizations that are nonprofits that are doing fantastic work. One of them, I think their youth homeless diversion rate was about 92%, so meaning that they were able to prevent most of the people that they encountered with from becoming homeless and needing a shelter in the first place. I think that's a model that we can rely on. Durham Youth Services is doing a fantastic job with that, and I think we can expand that model. Not just in Ajax, but throughout Durham region.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us here, and congratulations again on winning the election 2 months ago, and best of luck in your term. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Back to you.
Thank you very much for that insightful information, MPP Surjanic. We're going to take it now over to Chris Creamer, who's over at the Magic Wall, who's got some information for us. Chris?
Thank you, Jonathan. Look at my very magical wall here. I'm very excited to show this to you guys. If I hit a button, boom. Look at that. Touchscreen technology. We're right here in 2008 here at Rogers Durham. This is how the House of Commons seats looked as of yesterday. And we see the Liberal Party of Canada led right now by Mark Carney with 152, the Conservatives in second with 120, the Bloc with 33, the NDP with 24. We had 3 independents and 2 from the Green Party, matching the amount of leaders they have right now, actually. As you can see from here, we were entering in with a minority government, which meant, we had the Liberal Party and the NDP party working together, which is how the Liberal Party was able to get a lot of their legislation through. So if we tap the magic screen here, this is the advanced poll numbers that we were seeing, and very, very impressive compared to the 2021 federal election. Granted, that was during the COVID lockdown, but still, you see right here, day one, that was Good Friday. And we had 2 million people come out to vote for the advanced polls, 600,000 more than we saw in 2021 on day one, and it just keeps going up on each day. It shows that there's a lot of enthusiasm in Canada right now to vote and have people's voices heard. So if we look at some of the riding by riding numbers here, Pickering Brooklyn, which is a new federal riding this year, population of 122,000, 100,000 people in Pickering, Brooklyn are registered voters, and we had 1/4 of those voting in advance voting, incredible numbers. And it's similar numbers all through, right? You look at Ajax, 97,000 registered voters, 25,000 again advance voting, still around 26%, pretty good. Whitby at 93,000, again, 24,000 advance voting. We're all looking at around 25 to 30% here. Oshawa, a little lower than the rest, 104,000 registered voters and 22 advance voting. In Bowmanville, Oshawa North, another new riding created for this federal election, 101,000 registered voters, 28,000 advance voting. York Durham, yet another new riding for this election. We saw 30% of the registered voters vote in advance voting. 99,000 voters, 30,000 already voted even before Election Day. Northumberland Clerk, more of the same, even higher percentage, 94,000 registered voters, 31,000 advance voting. And Halliburton Kawartha Lakes, again, the numbers still showing passionate voting and voters in Durham region, 104,000 registered voters, 28,000 advanced voting, just incredible through Durham region. A lot of people very, very passionate about their election, and it's really great to see voting in action. Jonathan, back to you.
We've got some interesting news happening. It looks like Rogers has declared it to be a Liberal government going forward. So that's not the official statement, but that is where things are going. Quite interesting. It certainly won't be a majority, that's for sure. But we'll have a Liberal government. So let's take a look at our own little riding here. So, for example, right now we've got some of the polls are coming in. We've got the new riding, which is really, really exciting. It consists of Uxbridge, Skugog, as well as York Region, or parts of York Region. And right now, Jacob Mantle, who is the PC candidate there, is leading. And Chris, do you have some information about Jacob you could help us with? Fill us in.
Sure, absolutely. Jacob Mantle, who is the Conservative candidate for the brand new York Durham riding. He's a lawyer, but he was one of the youngest people ever elected to City Council in the GTA. When he was just 21 years old, 15 years ago, he was elected to Uxbridge Township to become the youngest councillor in town history. After serving one term, he left to become a lawyer. He is a lifelong resident of the York Durham region, born and raised in Uxbridge, and he has a BA in political science from Queen's. He has worked as an advisor to federal MPs and MPPs before he went to law school. And he actually ran for the Conservative Party back in 2021 in the old Pickering-Uxbridge riding, finishing second with 36% of the vote. Lives in Uxbridge with his wife, Megan. And of course, like most conservative candidates, is advocating for lower taxes and affordable housing, fiscal responsibility. I guess you could call him. He started as a young prospect in the political world, and now looks like, well, I don't see the numbers. It might be on your screen there. Looks like he might be getting the call up to Ottawa to become an MP for this new riding of York Durham.
Well, he's definitely leading. He's got 863 votes at this point, as compared to number 2 with 500 and some odd votes, Robert Grossi. While we're on that riding, why don't we just talk about Mr. Grossi for a minute, because he was the mayor of Keswick, or of Georgina for a while, right? He lives in Keswick, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Robert Grossi, running for the Liberals up in York Durham. He was mayor of Georgina for 20 years, from 1994 to 2014, and then after that served as a regional councillor as well as the deputy mayor of Georgina for 4 years. Clearly someone who the people of Georgina love. Georgina makes up quite a large portion, population-wise, of that New York-Durham region. He was born and raised in Toronto, settled in Keswick about 40 years ago, so he's lived up in the area for a while. He has served on several committees in York Region, including transportation. He's the founder of a company called Georgina Cares, and he established the Mayor's Youth Forum to engage and inspire young political leaders. He volunteers with the Salvation Army, Brain Cancer Canada, and he's an active fundraiser. He's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for local causes. Seems like a pretty good guy, but I think he's going to be finishing second place tonight in New York Durham, it looks like, unfortunately.
It certainly does look that way. We're now, as you can see on the screen, we're at 101 seats for the Conservatives and 137 for the Liberals, 21 for the Bloc and 3 for the NDP. The NDP are taking a real beating on this election. I think that was expected. I think they announced yesterday that They announced yesterday that they were not expecting to form a government, but they did want to be there to make sure everybody else was honest. So that's the way that's going. 106 now. Okay, so we're going to go to a live shot from Desjarlais camp. There we are.
Main Conservative, Laurier Sainte-Marie, Stephen Guilbeault.
Okay, somebody looks happy there. They're waving.
11 votes have been counted so far. I don't think it'll remain.
And they're clapping, they're applauding, everybody's happy. Some of the other things that are happening, Turnbull is leading by quite a bit, and he is the Liberal candidate for Whitby, and he's doing very well. It was expected, I think, ahead of time. Jamil Giovanni is having a very tough race. He's at 171. The Liberal candidate is at 160, which is very, very close. So that'll be an interesting one to follow as well. So why don't we talk a little bit about the Northland, about Haliburton in that area, Jamie Schmalley. Chris, do you have some information on Jamie? He's been there forever, it seems. He's in the lead. He's got 839 votes. He's leading.
He's leading right now. Jamie Schmalley, he's the current member of parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes. He's a former journalist. He's a podcast host. First elected as MP for the then-named Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock riding in 2015. He's since been re-elected a couple of times in 19 and 21. He currently serves as the Shadow Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations. He hosts a Conservative Party podcast called The Blueprint, lives in Lindsay, and went to Loyalist College up there. Former news anchor, former news director. He covered municipal politics and then got into municipal politics, eventually federal politics there. Served as a campaign manager for former MP Barry Devlin up there from 04 to 15. Regularly shows up as an MC for various charitable events such as United Way, Easter Seals, Big Brothers Big Sisters. He runs a program called the Capital Experience, which sends local students to Ottawa to learn about post-secondary and career opportunities. He supports eliminating sales tax on new homes up to $1.3 million, supports Conservative plans for a national addiction treatment strategy, funding 50,000 recovery beds in opioid manufacturers. And it sounds like from the numbers coming in that he has a shot there. He's certainly the favorite in Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes to be re-elected for a third time and serve a fourth term in Ottawa representing the riding.
It certainly does. I wanted to ask you something, Chris, because you're a logo guy without question. You've got a business called sportslogos.net. I'm curious, is there any correlation between the colors that a party chooses and the logos and so forth? Like, does a lot of thought go into that, or is that just something that has just developed over the years?
I'm glad you asked that, Jonathan. Finally, something that I can handle here. Yes, I do have a passion for branding and logos. And of course, when the election comes around, aside from learning about the candidates, I learn about some of the history behind the branding. Now, we are all used to seeing red representing the Liberal Party, blue representing the Conservatives, orange for the NDP, and so forth. But why? Why do these parties have these colors and these brands representing them? With many things in Canada, it goes back to the United Kingdom. When the Liberal Party started, red was associated with the then Liberal Party in the United Kingdom. Now, since then, gold has been picked up as the Liberal Party color in the UK, but at the time it was red. The UK Liberal Party used to use a rose in their branding back then, a red rose. Red's traditionally associated with liberalism, reform from British political history. And of course, it just happens to tie in nicely with Canada's national colors of red and white. Probably most importantly for the Liberal Party at the time is that it contrasted quite nicely with the Conservative Party's blue. Blue, again, based on the blue used by the Tories in the United Kingdom, which symbolized loyalty to the Crown and tradition, which are two very key Conservative values and ideals. For the NDP, which was a party that joined in the 1960s, orange is a color that is typically associated with labor movements across the world, especially like in Netherlands and the Ireland. And it is a neutral color between red and blue to sort of serve as an alternative towards the traditional choices. The Bloc Québécois uses a light blue. That is clearly a reference to the Quebec flag. The Green Party, Jonathan, you could probably take that one. The Green Party is because they are green and environment and recycling. And finally, the People's Party of Canada chose purple when they started their party just a few years ago, as it was a mix of red from the Liberals and blue from the Conservatives to say, hey, if you want to join from either party, we're here for you. That is why the different parties use those colors. And now you know.
You're just a wealth of information, Chris. Thank you very much for that. We're going to now go to our next guest in the studio, the former mayor of Scugog Township, Bobby Drew, who has had a great relationship while she was in office with the Honourable Erin O'Toole, the Prime Minister at the time. So we're going to talk about the importance of municipal and federal relationships. So I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thanks for joining us, Bobby. As mayor and longtime politician in Scugog, you've experienced an excellent relationship with the then Member of Parliament, the Honourable Erin O'Toole. How does federal government ensure that the unique needs of a small municipality such as Scugog are considered in national policymaking and funding allocation?
Yeah, I had a great relationship with MP Erin O'Toole. We kept in touch all of the time, and that's very important. But as far as the unique needs of a small municipality like Scugog Township, I would say that major infrastructure is one of the strongest and most needy area, because back in the 80s and 90s, the government's pulled back from providing funding for roads and infrastructure. And for many years, the municipalities had 2/3 of the cost on our backs. So things have changed a little bit now, and they've increased the grant opportunities for roads and bridges and so on. But in a small municipality with so many, there's a lot of agricultural in the small municipalities, and therefore, you know, you have miles and miles with only 1 or 2 taxpayers. So we don't have the ability to address our roads needs like larger municipalities do. So that's huge. And also technology. A lot of, especially in the mid areas of the province, and certainly in Scugog Township, there are many areas that are underserviced with technology, and we need to have that. Agriculture depends very heavily on technology these days.
Well, especially with the new high-speed internet that's been going through Scugog lately. It's been very helpful.
Yeah.
So what specific federal programs or initiatives have had the most significant impact on the infrastructure? This is fairly related to the last question there. Especially during, I know you had a bit of a unique tenure because a lot of it was during the pandemic, but what happened during your tenure there that the federal government was really able to help out with? Well,
one of the big things that's been a help to all municipalities is the gas tax that we've had. And the nice thing about the gas tax is that you have some flexibility in what you use it for. It's not like a grant where you have a specific bridge or a specific road. With the gas tax, you can address your highest needs and deal with that. So that was probably the best bit of unique funding that we got. But there's also been, like, as I said before, there's been more grant opportunities in the past number of years. And I think with small municipalities, there needs to be an understanding that we do not have the tax base. And so I think that the small municipalities need to have sort of extra consideration given to the fact that they are smaller and a less tax base. And many of us, like Scugog, are in the Greenbelt, and that we cannot expand.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And a bit of a disadvantage too. So much land, so few people.
Yeah, we love being in the Greenbelt.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, we love being the breadbasket for the rest of Ontario and Canada. But it does have its issues because we cannot expand too much.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Great. Let me ask you, Bobby, the big things that are really important to small municipalities are housing, public transit, and access to health care. How does liaising with the federal government get you more of those things?
Well, health care and affordable housing are mainly provincial. But there are some special needs and some special things that can be done. They've asked us, or there's been talk about reducing I forget what you call it, the development charges.
Right.
There's been talk about that, but those development charges are used for the services for our new residents and for our existing residents, like fire, library, arenas, pools, roads, all of those things. That's what it's used for. So that's not, and we want to make sure that the savings are for the, as far as housing are concerned, the savings go to the buyer, not the developer. So I think that there needs to be some incentives, like maybe a GST rebate or other incentives for developers to build the houses that are needed.
Right.
And that's the only way they would get incentives.
What does the federal government do to support small municipalities in Ontario, such as Scugog, to attract businesses and foster economic development, economic growth?
Again, economic development is provincial responsibility, but small and urban and agricultural municipalities need the access to technology, as I mentioned before. They also need serviced land, serviced industrial land, to attract business and industry, and that makes a better tax base. It makes a better ratio between residential, commercial, and industrial. Because right now in our municipality, there's a heavy reliance on the residential tax. So we need to balance that a little bit more.
Okay. Interesting. Chris, you wanted to ask about some mechanisms in place for small communities, right?
Well, yeah, so let's say you have an issue, right? You have an issue that needs to be addressed by a federal department. Do you just have a direct line to your local MP? How does that work? How do you contact the federal government to get some help that's desperately needed for the town?
Well, you mentioned Aaron O'Toole.
Yeah.
Aaron O'Toole, one of the first visits he made when he was elected was to come to Scugog, and I happened to be in the office at the time. I was at the time he was elected, I was the deputy mayor, but I happened to be there. And we sat down and we talked about the issues. Same thing with Todd McCarthy, Minister McCarthy. I had to chat with him before he was elected. He phoned up to find out what the issues are in Scugog Township. So those lines of communications are so important. And I know with both of them, they have sent representatives to different committee meetings or council meetings where they're needed, but they actually have a standing position on some of the committees in Scugog Township. And so therefore, they get to know the issues. They also get to know the plans and how they can help. And sometimes they just find out through those committee meetings that, well, wait a minute, there's a grant coming down the tube. There's something that we can let them know about to apply for and stuff like that. So I think communication is the most important thing, and those lines need to be kept open.
For sure. Okay. So last question, and then I'll let you go on your way. We talked about how the federal government has helped with the building of infrastructure, roads, and all that. Is there anything else that you feel the federal government could do that a small municipality such as Scugog could really use that they don't already?
Let me see. I think we talked about the infrastructure. We talked about the green belt and the extra consideration for green belt communities for any grant applications that come over. I think one other point that I would probably like to bring up, and it's more federal and more encompassing than just Scugog Township, is the doctor shortage. And I think that they need to look at letting the doctors that are coming from other parts of the world get their licenses. There should be absolutely some testing. We should know what other countries provide and what training are provided and adapt their licensing accordingly. But we have too many doctors and engineers and nurses that are driving cabs or working cash registers, and God bless them for taking a job and enjoying being in Canada. But I've been in cabs and Ubers where it's an engineer that's driving the car, and they would dearly love to work in their own field. So I think those types of things really, they need to look at that, because we have an issue with healthcare in Canada. So
absolutely do.
Yeah.
And that's always top of mind for all Canadians entering an election. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
We really
Nice
appreciate it. Nice meeting you too. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you very much, former Mayor Drew. The numbers are coming in, as you can see, and it's quite interesting. The Liberals are out ahead with 150 seats and Conservatives 127. In case you're not aware, you need 172 seats for a majority. So I'm not sure if they're going to get to a majority, but it certainly looks like they're leading. This brings up a new question, Chris, and that's the future of Pierre Poilievre. If he doesn't come through here, then what do you think will happen?
Well, traditionally, when a party leader, especially someone of the stature of Poilievre, loses in an election like this, they tend to step down. And it might be a little too early to say what will happen to Pierre Poilievre after this election. But if they do lose, we look back at the 21 election where Aaron O'Toole stepped down. We look at the 2019 where Andrew Scheer stepped down. 2015, Stephen Harper stepped down. And even going before that, the Liberal leaders who had lost their elections in those previous ones, they all stepped down after their defeats. So Pierre Poilievre, if he's following tradition, he will probably step down if he is defeated tonight. But we can look back on Pierre Poilievre. I'm going to have a hard time saying that. He's been the leader of the opposition for the Conservative Party since 2022. This was his first election as the leader of the Conservatives. Had the Conservatives riding a high in the polls. At one point, they were projected, I was 95% chance of winning. I remember seeing back in January, back when Trudeau eventually announced his resignation. 45 years old. He's been the MP for the Carleton riding since 2004. So he's been in Ottawa in the House of Commons for over 20 years. When he was elected leader of the Conservative Party back in 2022, it was with over 70% of the vote. Clearly, the Conservatives were very, very excited and enthusiastic about him.
If I can just interject for a sec, Chris, we just got word that Mark Carney did win his riding.
Okay.
Of course, we're talking about, right now we're talking about Pierre Poilievre, and we're still waiting for the results on his particular riding to see if he's won, because there was some discrepancy, some concerns about that today, right, or yesterday?
Yeah, and it seemed like the Conservatives had been pouring a lot of resources into what had been a very, very safe riding for them. Again, as I just said, he had been representing that riding since 2004. We still don't have any results there yet, so we're not quite sure.
And I'm not really sure what happened there, but that certainly worked against them because those resources could have been used in other areas, and perhaps they're going to be regretting that, depending on the outcome.
Absolutely, yes. So it could be the end of the line for Pierre Poilievre. It's, of course, it's up to him. He could throw it back to the Conservative Party and say, hey, do you want me to keep representing? Because the Conservative Party did ride quite a wave under Poilievre.
Right.
It's hard to deny the fact that he did breathe a lot of new life into that party and really...
Sorry, you do have to question, though, where did those people come from, those votes? Did they support the Conservatives because they're really tired of the Liberals at the time? Did they support the Conservatives, or did they support the Liberals because they're going away from the NDP and the NDP votes are going to the Liberals? There's a lot of questions there, and the answers could be very, very vague.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Canadian politics and having a system where there's so many parties and options, viable parties and options here in Canada. In the United States, you only have a two-party system, realistically. You're either extreme left or extreme right, nowhere for people in the middle, whereas in Canada, you can bounce around as much as you want. You could say that, the Liberal rebirth was reinvigorated by the resignation of Trudeau, and there was maybe a lot of disenfranchised Liberals or NDPers who didn't want to support the party anymore under Justin Trudeau, and then they came back when Mark Carney was picked as leader. Who knows? We may never know. But it's all in Pierre Poilievre's hands now, whether or not we will see him run again whenever the next federal election is. So
we're going to listen to Terry Voss, who is in the studio.
Yes. So Jonathan, we're pleased to be joined here by Terry Voss, who runs the Voss's Independent up in Port Perry. Take it away, Jonathan.
It's all brand new. And Terry, welcome. I should say welcome back, because it was 2 months ago that you sat in the very same spot, and we talked about tariffs in the grocery business from a different perspective for the provincial election, when it was all brand new and we didn't really know what tariffs meant. But now we've got 2 months of that. We've got a federal election happening tonight, and I'm just curious about what sort of impact the tariffs have had on the cost of products that you normally source from the U.S.
Well, thanks for having me back. And we are starting to see the costs go up on a lot of product. Majority of product that we don't produce in Canada, or we don't have resources in Canada, we're starting to see already go up in prices. We're also seeing consumers being more conscientious about buying Canadian versus US product also. So not only are we seeing people look for items and resource the items that are Canadian made, that is kind of keeping the US prices maybe a little bit down, because I think those vendors know that we're looking for Canadian products. So the price may not have jumped up as high as we thought it was at first, but it is climbing.
Are there any specific products that you've noticed that have been affected more than others by these tariffs?
A lot of products that we simply don't have available here. Orange juice is always the first one. It's one of the things that we simply can't produce here. It's all done in the States, and coming over is also a great increase in price. And there's products that we just don't do here. We outsource all of it. And one of the things that we do see is that product, we are looking for substitutions because people don't want to pay the extra increase. So when you're looking at mayonnaise, for example, you're now seeing people look at where it's coming from, and they're looking at, for example, Hellmann's. We have the olive base, which is not from Canada, but the regular is. So people are changing their buying habits just based on that. And right now, even though those two costs are kept in line, they are our margins are getting less and less and less because of that.
Do exchange rates between the Canadian and US dollar, does that play any effect in these prices as well?
So exchange rate has always been a major effect when we buy product from the US, especially produce. And one of the things you gotta remember is traditionally around Christmas time, cauliflower goes for $8.99 a head.
Yeah.
And when the exchange rate is just like everything else goes up, and there's a bigger gap, we do pay a lot more money for our produce and some other products that do come across the border, some dairy products and meat products also, especially processed meat. Prices go up very, very quickly because the exchange rate is a big part of it, and you just can't buy extra product and hold on to it. So the US exchange rate is a big effect on a lot of our produce, and everything's done in US currency. So even if we buy from Mexico, because there are four actually, growing locations, Canada, US, Mexico, and Chile for us, for a lot of our produce, we pay it all in US currency. So it is always that a big effect.
So even Canadian produce you buy?
Not Canadian,
Okay.
but when you look at the other three countries, that's all US currency.
Oh, wow, okay.
I wanted to ask, you deal with a lot of local people in your operation. They must be affected by the U.S. Tariffs as well.
A lot of farmers are, because you have to think a lot of them sell to the U.S. for processing. And when they can't just sell to the Canadian market, where else do you go? So I think a lot of farmers are looking at other alternatives to have product processed here in Canada for sellability, or one of the key things is looking for different markets outside of the United States. One of the things that you have to look at is a lot of our grains, soya, canola, for example, which is a big part of our news right now too. We have to look for different markets, because sending it to the States, they want to put a tariff on it, so they're not going to buy it. So we have to look for other markets. And the same goes for processing. We have to start processing our own product here in Canada and not sending it over to the States to be tariffed and then to come back to be tariffed a second time if possible.
Okay. Are there measures that the federal government can implement to alleviate the burden of U.S. tariffs on Ontario produce?
Well, I think one of the things we have to look at is, I think all the politicians will talk about this, start producing our own. And I think one of the things we have to look at is we don't have that many processing factories in Canada. So we do outsource. And I always have a very big sense of a giggle about this one particular product that we sell. We take our cucumbers and we send them to India to be processed and shipped back to Canada, for example. And I'll show you the label. So I always giggle that why don't we have that process here in Canada? So why are we doing that? And that's not just one item. That's the many items that we have that we ship out raw material, and it comes back as your Christie cookies, for example.
Right. Okay.
So is there any way the federal government can encourage development of alternative supply chains? Like you were talking about how orange juice, there's only one place. Like, is there other alternate countries we can get orange juice from? Is there some sort of deal federal governments can work on to help us not rely so much on U.S. imports for these products?
And we already do. We now have oranges throughout the entire year because Africa now is a big supplier of oranges. So there are alternatives for us. Some of those products are farmed out there, shipped and processed in Canada. I believe one of our PC orange juice is Canadian because the oranges come from Africa, but the product is made here and processed here. So we get to put that product of Canada stamp on it. So one of the things that you will see more and more of that happening. And we do have different growing areas that we have to relate with. We just don't rely on the U.S. for produce. We do have other countries part of that food chain too. So it's that big circle. And I think what you'll see is that we may have a fall in getting the fresh vegetables and the fresh fruit at certain times of the year because that would be traditionally a U.S. time, but it will be different when you see the other countries because they'll be becoming a bigger supplier and you'll see more of their product come more available and they'll get a better price for it too.
Hopefully no more $9 cauliflower for Christmas.
Not for Christmas.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight, Terry.
Thank you for having me.
And talking to us again. And hopefully next time we talk, we won't have to talk about all these silly tariffs.
I hope so.
Thanks so much. Back to you, John.
That was great. Thank you very much, Terry Voss, the owner of Voss Independent Grocer. Interesting news, not really that interesting. Jamie Schmalley has been confirmed as the Conservative representative, the elected official for Halliburton Kawartha. I think that was pretty expected. Jamie has been there since, I think you said earlier, 2015.
That's right.
So not a big upset surprise there. The interesting one that we're looking at is a little bit further south with Jennifer McKelvey, who has taken a dramatic lead to the point where that has more or less been confirmed a victory as well. She's got 7,000 votes, as you can see there. And Chris, do you have some information? Do you have some information about her? She has been elected.
She has been elected, yes. Jennifer McKelvey, who is actually the deputy mayor of Toronto and will now be MP for Ajax. She's playing some municipal bingo, it seems like. She's collecting all sorts of cities in the GTA. She's in her late 40s. She is an environmental geoscientist who lives in Scarborough with 2 children. She does have personal and professional ties to Ajax, though she does not live here. A PhD in geology from the U of T, a former postdoc researcher in geochemistry, as well as environmental remediation. Seems to be a very smart person. And she was, I believe, she was acting mayor in Toronto for a while after John Tory resigned as mayor of Toronto in the summer of 2023. She was going up against Greg Brady, who was representing the Conservatives. Greg Brady is a radio show host. He hosted 640 Toronto's Toronto Today radio show. Sports fans know him from hosting several shows on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, as well as shows on Rogers Sportsnet. He did take a leave of absence from that in order to run for the Conservative Party, and it looks like he's going to be going back to his radio hosting job after this election. Not a good turnout for Greg Brady, but McKelvey was predicted to win. The numbers I was seeing showed her expected to end up somewhere in the 60% range, which is just unheard of in the Durham region. So congratulations to McKelvey. Seems like she will be, I guess, taking her leave from the acting deputy mayor of the city of Toronto to go to Ottawa.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with your job in radio, Chris. So let's talk a little bit about, while the numbers are coming in, we're obviously still waiting for them. We've got 159 Liberals and 133 Conservative seats. As I mentioned before, we need 172 to be a majority government. So we'll see where that goes. Chris, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I wanted to ask you about the financial situation of the world. It looks like we're heading into a recession. Those are certainly all the pointers that are out there. And I wanted to know if you have any information you can share with people, what they could possibly do to combat a potential recession this summer. What are some of the things that they could do to prevent that from happening, or to ease it? Let's put it that way, to ease it up for them.
Well, to ease a recession, for each person individually, maybe take some common sense tactics. Now, I'm not a financial expert by any means. If you want to know about sports branding, I am your guy. But if my family was hit with a recession, I would prioritize spending in a more common sense way. no frivolous spending. Try to save where you can. If you have some high interest debt, try to hit that first. Diversify your income streams. Invest wisely if you can. Try to support your local businesses. And most importantly, just stay informed and adapt. If you're able to, just try to roll with the punches as much as you can and pivot as much as you can there. Make sure you can save. Just be ready to have an emergency fund just in case.
And not to mention, don't forget to mention supporting local businesses.
Yeah, I got that in there, don't worry.
Which is extremely important as well. Speaking of local businesses, we're going to go now to an interview with the Executive Director of the North Durham Chamber of Commerce, Misty Santos. And Misty's relatively new in this post, so it'll be quite interesting to get her take on the relationship the Chamber has with the federal government. So let's take a look at that.
Jonathan, and thank you, Misty, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
My first question has to do with, guess what, federal government, and how the main avenues through which the federal government typically engages with local chambers of commerce, such as the North Durham Chamber of Commerce, to address any regional economic challenges that they may face.
So I think it's really important for people to understand that there's a hierarchy here. So the North Durham Chamber of Commerce has a big brother, which is the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And in turn, they have a big brother, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And so through this hierarchy, we can channel concerns, questions, challenges from local businesses through that channel all the way to the top and get some resolution.
Okay, and there is no Planet Earth Chamber of Commerce. It just stops there. Okay.
No Planet Earth Chamber of Commerce.
So how does the federal government ensure that any policy decisions reflect the concerns of local chambers of commerce and their members?
So, beyond the sort of networking and the marketing that we do for all of our chamber members, one of the big things that we focus on is advocacy. And because we are a rural chamber, our advocacy needs are different than urban centres. And so with conversations, with meetings, with coffees with our local members, we can take those challenges and concerns and then channel them up through the provincial and federal levels. Once it gets to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, then we can start to set policy and make sure that that policy comes back down and helps our local members.
So basically that chain going up is very important.
It's absolutely critical, and I'm not sure that a lot of people understand that when they become a member of any chamber, whether it's North Durham or anyone, they get access to that channel where their problems can be heard and solved.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm interested about the money end of it, the funding and that grant programs.
Yeah.
Does the federal government actually provide grants or funding for chambers, for local chambers, or is that disseminated through a national chamber, or is there funding?
There is no direct funding for Chamber of Commerce operations. So we are funded, right? So I am funded by membership dues, and our staff is funded by event sponsorship. So there's no operational, but we can get funding for events that are, special projects, things like that. Most of the grants and the funding are actually for our members. So we advocate and we provide accessibility to grants and funding for different businesses within our membership. So that's where our main focus is for grants and funding.
Okay. And how does it exactly work? Like, how does the federal government liaise with the chamber? Like, what sort of involvement would there be?
I just had a really great conversation with Todd Letts, who's in leadership for the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, that's going to go further up the chain, the conversation I had with him. So again, really relying on that hierarchy to get that information down. But it is a two-way lane. As much as I can get information up to the top, it has to also come back down to me. Okay, so that's what we're really focusing on, is information up and information down. So one of the big ways that we're going to do that is through conversations that come down from provincial to federal, and then, from federal to provincial, and then down to the local chambers. Okay. That two-way stream of information is key.
Because the emphasis obviously is on small businesses, because that's who you deal with, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I call us we're the feet on the street, and our job is to make sure that information, those conversations that I have in a coffee shop, go all the way up to the top.
Great.
Yeah.
Is there any way that the federal government can help chambers strengthen networks in collaboration with other business organizations across Canada?
The F word, the funding word, always money. It goes a long way, and we make good use of those dollars. There are other things that we rely heavily on, and that is making sure that whoever's in charge, whoever's at the top, has an open ear. And as much as we advocate for the members, we want and ask that they will advocate for us, because what we're doing is really sort of the work on the street. 97% of businesses are in this realm, so they have to listen. So what we ask for is money and an open ear and an open heart to to these business owners. Right?
So beyond the F word, is there any additional measures that federal government can implement to address things that might affect chamber members, such as labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, inflation, for these small and medium businesses?
I think there's some really key areas, and again, some of the bigger urban centres wouldn't apply to them at all. But for example, I was having a fantastic conversation with one of our bigger members. He's got a bigger manufacturing operation, and transportation for his workers is key. There is no transportation, so we're just asking for buses. Get us some buses, okay? So it's things like that we really need to kind of focus on. Another one is credit card transaction fees. Like, give us a break on those, because those are really high and sometimes very limiting for businesses. When the focus is on innovation and e-commerce expansion, we need some help making that happen. And so getting workers to the floor, but also helping us online with reduced credit card fees. To be very specific, is what we want.
Fantastic ideas. You should run for office.
Okay.
Misty, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Brand new Executive Director
Brand new,
of
yes.
the North Durham Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Always nice to hear from the Skugog Chamber of Commerce, or sorry, the North Durham Chamber of Commerce, as they're now known. Whitby's an interesting part of the world as well. We've got Ryan Turnbull, who is the incumbent, is in quite a race there with Steve Yamada. It's 4,000 to 3,400 as far votes that are in. So, Chris, what do you have to tell us about Ryan Turnbull?
Ryan Turnbull, he has been the Member of Parliament for Whitby since 2019. He won re-election in 2021 and is leading so far tonight here in 2025, hoping to start his third term representing Whitby. He is a social innovation consultant, a social entrepreneur, founder of Eco-Ethonomics, Inc. He manages 350 projects, holds an honors BA in philosophy from Carleton. He was an educator, researcher at Carleton, University of London. He lived and worked in South Korea and the United Kingdom for a time. Lives in Whitby with his wife, Suze, and their two daughters. As I said, first elected MP for Whitby in 2019. Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance and Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, and also a member of the Finance and Industry Standing Committees. So far in his term as MP, he has secured all sorts of major local investments for the people of Whitby, such as a commitment for the Whitby Hospital, $25 million in housing accelerator fund grants, $25 million in a Whitby sports complex funding, as well as broadband, electric vehicle buses, affordable housing, waterfront improvements. So a lot in his 6 years as MP for Whitby. He's obviously hoping to do more if he can extend his term for another, depends if it's a minority government or majority government, of course, a number of years. He is up against Steve Yamada, the Conservative candidate for Whitby, who is a school teacher as well as a Whitby Regional Council. He has served 3 terms on Whitby Council, been there since 2014 while holding degrees from York University, University of Toronto, living in Whitby with his wife Jennifer and their 2 daughters. Yamada, as you may or may not know, resigned as deputy mayor last year amid tensions with the council leadership. He was ejected from a council meeting in October. He was reprimanded and suspended 1 week's pay by Whitby Council earlier this year for breaching council code of conduct. So he's had his issues with the local council there in Whitby, but still doing okay in terms of showing in the Whitby riding for the Conservative Party tonight. Second place right now by, what were you saying, Jonathan? Maybe about 1,600. 600 votes right now. So he's still in there. He's still got a shot there against Turnbull and maybe securing and flipping the Whitby riding to the Conservatives. We'll see. Still a ways to go in Whitby.
It's only 50 out of the 237 polls that are in.
It's still early. Still early
to go. So overall, we've got, as you can see on the screen, we've got 157 Liberal seats, 144 Conservatives, 24 for the Bloc, 10 NDP, and the Green is at 0. And that, of course, those are projections. Those are not actual results, but they are obviously very, very close. I wanted to ask you, Chris, a little bit about, we're talking about leaders and so forth, a little bit about Jagmeet Singh. He's been around for about 8 years, I guess, as leader of the NDP party. This election seems to be one of his biggest struggles yet. Getting support, they put everything they could into BC pretty well, which is what their stronghold, they hope to be their stronghold. Why don't you tell us a little bit about his history?
Well, Jagmeet Singh, he, like as you mentioned, he's been leader of the NDP since 2017. He wasn't an MP when he was picked as leader of the NDP, similar to Mark Carney and the Liberals. He was first elected MP 2 years later when he ran in Burnaby South. At the time, he was an MPP, actually, in Bramalea, where he had served since 2011. His parents immigrated to Canada from Punjab, India. He himself was raised in Windsor, where he earned a bachelor's degree in biology from Western Ontario, then went to York University, worked as a lawyer for many years. And this I did not know, Jonathan. He enjoys Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is interesting. That would be a good skill for a prime minister to have, I think. You know, just take that to the tariff meetings with Donald Trump. He served as the deputy leader for Ontario's NDP for 2 years in the mid-2010s. And he, I guess you could say controversially to some members of his party, negotiated a special deal with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party back in March of 2022 in order to secure some NDP priorities in exchange for basically supporting everything the Liberals did for a few years. And you wonder if that may have cost the NDP here in this election. You know, voters, they don't have short memories. They remember things like that. A lot of NDP voters that I know of, they weren't too fond of that deal. Yeah. So, and we're starting to see, you know, the numbers come in for the NDP tonight, and it's a fairly disappointing evening for them so far.
It is. Although they expected single digits, and it looks like they are up to 11 seats, so perhaps perhaps it's not as dismal as we expected, but certainly nothing to write home about. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, Chris, because you're obviously in the know, is that everybody has been focusing on U.S. tariffs as an election platform. It's all about, you know, our deal with the U.S. What are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? What's it going to mean to everybody? Even I was going to say as early as this morning, but it's as late as this evening. Donald Trump went on to talk about how beneficial Canada being the 51st state, and if I hear that one more time, it's going to drive me crazy. But there are other issues at stake as well in this country. It's more than just the tariffs. And I get that they're important. They're very important, without question. What are some of the other issues that people are concerned about?
Well, the same issues that have troubled Canadians for decades. You know, healthcare is always an issue at the forefront of Canadians' minds. Now, healthcare is typically a provincial issue, but still, there is federal oversight over all that. Climate change, the issue that'll never go away. The economy is something we always look out for. Jobs and housing, right? The price of houses right now are, you know, not good for people trying to get into the market for the first time. When I first bought a house 15 years ago, I thought the prices were terrible, and boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. You know,
right.
Look, I don't think I could have bought one now if I was entering the market. So clearly, you know, obviously Donald Trump and the United States, that is a big threat. As now it seems like, you know, maybe he wasn't joking about that 51st state quip earlier this year, but yeah, that is a big threat, obviously, to Canadian sovereignty. But there are other things happening in the world beyond what Donald Trump tweets.
There are, without question. It's a very scary situation. And you're right, the other things are very important. Housing is an issue for everybody. I don't know how young people can actually do it, and I guess people have been saying that for quite a while. I think earlier one of our guests alluded to the fact that it's a balance between the environment and housing, and it continues to do that. So just for the information of our viewers, Jacob Mantle has been confirmed as the leader of the new riding, which is Scugog, Uxbridge, and part of York Region. And he has taken that, I don't have the exact numbers with the lead, but quite a substantial lead over top of the Robert Grossi. He has definitely been elected. I wanted to reach out to you, Chris, a little bit about Oshawa. Rhonda Kirkland is running there. She's leading, and I just wanted to know what information you had about Rhonda.
Rhonda Kirkland, the Conservative candidate for the Oshawa riding. Now, Oshawa had been represented by Colin Carey for quite some time. He chose not to run here in 2025, so we had a whole field full of new candidates. Rhonda Kirkland is a certified educational therapist with over 20 years of experience providing therapy for individuals with learning disabilities. She holds a bachelor's degree and advanced certification from the National Institute for Learning Development, a speaker, a trainer, and advocate for early intervention strategies in education. Born and raised right here in Oshawa, led grassroots charitable initiatives through the Rotary Club there. A longtime political advocate with 3 decades of involvement in local and national campaigns, working to advance federal legislation focused on human trafficking and victims' rights. Strong advocate for affordability, safety, quality of life for families, and a single mother of 2, of course, with a strong commitment to securing a stronger future for Oshawa's youth and families. She is going up against Isaac Ransom from the Liberal Party. He is a public policy consultant, a former government staffer. He grew up in Oshawa as well, the son of a school teacher as well as a United Church minister. He's worked with local governments across Canada to implement shared micro-mobility programs. He holds a master's from Monash University and, focusing on protecting local manufacturing jobs, all the typical political points there Isaac is supporting. But second place right now to Kirkland, who looks to be in the lead there. She was projected to win from a lot of the early polling that we had seen. And so far, it looks like that she's got the lead at least. I don't think we're calling it yet, but she's leading.
Absolutely. So it looks like Mark Carney is leading the Liberal Party to victory. That's certainly the buzzword out there right now. I wanted to check back with you. Bowmanville and Oshawa North is an interesting riding for the people in the north part of Durham, because that used to be, Skugog used to be part of that riding. And Jamil Giovanni, who I guess was elected in the last election, he has an interesting story. He's having a very tough time of it down there right now. He's only 400 votes ahead, and which is not as many as people had expected. But I know we've met Jamil a number of times, and why don't you give us a little background on him?
Jamil, well, he was elected in a by-election up in the old, I guess it was the Durham riding, the old Durham riding. He was elected in a by-election to replace Aaron O'Toole after he resigned following the 2021 election. He resides in Oshawa. He's a cancer survivor, advocate of public health care. He grew up in Brampton. He spent time in the United States. He went to Yale, where he interned with U.S. Senator Cory Booker, I believe he's a Democrat senator from New Jersey. And he formed a friendship, of course, people know, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance while he went to Yale there. He is a lawyer. He is an author. He is a broadcaster, one of, I believe, 3 broadcasters running for the Conservatives in the Durham region area. He was first elected back in March of 2024. This is his first general election that he's a part of. He hosted the show Tonight with Jamil Giovanni. He served on Justice and Human Rights and Canadian Heritage Committees. He's a former member of Doug Ford's Premier Council on Equality of Opportunity and the former president of the Canada Strong and Free Network. Jamil was actually a Liberal at one point. He switched to the Conservative Party, I think maybe about 10, 15 years ago, which explains his relationship with Democratic U.S. Senator Cory Booker. He is running up against Bridget Gerard, who is giving him a run for his money tonight in the new Bowmanville-Oshawa North riding. Jamil was favored to win this riding by quite a bit, but it looks like it's getting a little closer than we would have thought. Bridget Gerard is an educator. She's a school principal. She's lived in Bowmanville for over 30 years with her husband, mother of 3 daughters, over 30 years working in education, has spent the past 12 years as a principal and vice principal, but has held a lifelong interest in Canadian politics, a longtime volunteer in both federal and provincial political campaigns, and she has her undergraduate degree in Canadian Studies and History from University of Toronto.
Great. Thank you very much for that insight. Jamil Giovanni has just taken a big jump. I guess a few more polls have come in, and he now has about a 1,500 vote lead over top of Bridget Gerard. I wanted to switch over to Pickering, an interesting riding where Juanita Nathan is actually taking the lead. And she is, of course, the Liberal candidate. You can see on the numbers on your screen, the Liberals are leading in 156 seats, the Conservatives at 146. So it's interesting. I guess there's a lot of polls coming in from the West. Traditionally, Liberals tend to do well in Ontario. I think they took a little bit of a backseat in the East Coast, a little bit less than was expected. But they're doing well in Ontario, and the West, I guess, is what's going to call this election, or it certainly looks like it's going to be that way. The Green Party have 2 seats now, and the NDP are back to 10. So let's go back to Pickering. What do we know about Juanita Nathan?
Juanita Nathan, just like her contemporary in running in Ajax, she is a council person from another city. So Juanita Nathan is actually a City of Markham councillor, where she has been since 2022. Graduate of Brock University, a BA in psychology. She holds 2 Master of Arts in linguistics. She started in social services with a project for the Ministry of the Attorney General focused on domestic violence. She's a school board trustee, worked for the York Region York Region District School Board, my apologies, from 2010 to 22, a community service worker specializing in youth outreach. She actually ran for the Liberal Party nomination back in 2017 for Markham Thornhill in the federal by-election, where she ended up not having a good experience and publicly criticized the internal nomination process that the Liberal Party had back then. She seems to have forgiven and forgotten because she ran again and won for Pickering, Brooklyn to represent the Liberal Party. And I guess just like McKelvey and Ajax, if she does end up winning tonight, she will probably have to resign her seat as City of Markham council person.
All right. I think what we'll do is Jamil Giovanni has been confirmed, by the way, Chris. I know we talked about him earlier. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Ajax. We haven't done that yet. So why don't you give us some information on some of the people in Ajax. Oh, actually, we've got a live shot from Ajax, and they're very happy there because Jennifer McKelvey has obviously won the seat. So let's go live to their wrap-up party. You can see they're dancing. They're happy people. You can see at the bottom of your screen there that it is projected that Mark Carney will lead the Liberal Party to victory. And although we're looking at the numbers underneath, and there's now only eight seats between the Liberals and the Conservatives, so it does change. I think what we'll do, Chris, is we'll take a break for about 10 minutes or so and let the numbers roll out until we have some more information that we can share with viewers, okay?
Sounds great.
So we'll do that right now. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so. Terry, welcome. I should say welcome back, because it was 2 months ago that you sat in a very... from a...
privilege to represent them in the House of Commons, and I am just heartwarmed, and just I'm just almost speechless, which is not a good thing for a politician to be. I know that. So I did write a speech on a sticky note, you know, and I can't thank my family enough, and I want to thank my husband, who has been my partner in all things. For almost 25 years as marriage, but even longer than that together, and Colin and Caitlin for all their hard work. And I will say Caitlin did over 35,000 steps in one day today. And my sister and my dad and my aunts and my cousins and my mom and all of my family that are here, just thank you. And they've been here through all the campaigns, so thank you so much to all of you. And I have to thank my number one in all things politics, Charissa. I don't know where she is, right? And Charissa's been with me for several years now, and she ran the last campaign I was in. It was a municipal campaign, and she could have gone running, screaming from the building when the Mayor of Toronto resigned, and I became acting Mayor of Toronto, but she stayed, and then she stayed through this, and I'm hopeful that she'll keep staying through all these adventures, and I'm so grateful to Charissa and to Emma and to Gary and to all of the campaign team that worked, and to all of you, many volunteers that probably have blisters and sunburns, and really put your heart and your soul into this big win today that I'm so very grateful for. And that leaves now speaking about the shoes that I fill here in Ajax. And I want to give a very big thank you to Mark Holland. His love of the community and how much the community loves him showed every day when I was knocking on doors, and he has been nothing short of generous and kind and helpful with me in this endeavor, and I will try to do him proud as I try to do the residents of Ajax proud. I look out and I see many political leaders here as well. We have the wonderful Jerry Phillips, who is here, and incredible. And my new partner, MPP Rob Serjanik, newly elected. And of course, you know my heart is with the municipal politicians, and I know how hard you all work day in and day out. And thank you so much, Sterling Lee, for all the doors you've knocked on. And Marilyn and Nancy, and I don't know if there's others in there, I look forward to working with you as well in the months and the years to come. And the last thank you on that before I get into saying, you know, why I'm so proud to be a Liberal Party is to thank the Federal Liberal Riding Association here in Ajax. Thank you for all the groundwork and all the work that you put in and day out, and I'm so excited for us to work together in this beautiful community. People ask why I'm running or why I ran. At the end of February, we saw the President of the United States treat another world leader with horrible disrespect. And I am a happy person. You've heard me say before, my kids say my happiness can be annoying. I'm very happy, and I felt sad. And I felt sad in the pit of my stomach that we could talk to each other in that way. And then the Liberals did a great thing. They elected Mark Carney. And I felt hope. I felt hope that we could campaign on something positive, and I felt hope that we could build Canada strong And I'm so proud of the platform that they have put out. And I intend to live and breathe that day in and day out as I represent this beautiful community of Ajax in Ottawa. So we have an incredible team in the Liberal Party. I look forward to working with each and every one of them as we serve our respective communities.
Well, that was quite interesting. A lot of partying going on there with Jennifer McKelvey, the former deputy mayor of Toronto, who is now the elected official for Ajax. Also, we've got Pickering has gone Liberal with Juanita Nathan. We mentioned her earlier. I didn't get a chance earlier, Chris. I wanted to ask you about Alicia Vianga, who gave her a really good run for her money, the Conservative rep. And I think you've got some good background information on her.
Yeah, sure. Alicia Vianga, sorry, my apologies to Alicia. Pickering, Brooklyn Conservative candidate, small business owner. She was the founder and executive director, she is the founder and executive director of After Breast Cancer, a Canada-wide charitable organization supporting both women and men during and after breast cancer treatment. She ran as the PC party candidate in the provincial election back in 2022 in Scarborough-Guildwood. She finished second with 31% of the vote. She's an active community advocate, serving on the BIA board for the Corso Italia, participating in local initiatives including Rotary Club events and Covenant House fundraisers. So, she did not take it tonight. And where are we going? We're going to Liberal? Let's talk about who won. Juanita Nathan, the Liberal candidate. Well, as I mentioned earlier, she was a Markham councillor person, a graduate of Brock. She, again, just like that Ajax candidate that we saw celebrating, she, a councillor for another city. So, City of Markham is going to have to look for a new councillor as Juanita joins Ottawa to represent Pickering, Brooklyn, that new riding. A former public school board trustee for the York Region District School Board, community service worker specializing in youth outreach, family violence counseling, and seniors programming. So congratulations to Juanita for all that. Okay.
All right, so let's go back to Ajax, which is always an interesting area. Waiting for the numbers there, but Jennifer McKelvey is still live, and there's the interview.
So delighted that the people of Ajax have given me this amazing responsibility to work for them in Ottawa, to represent this beautiful community. And really, as you know, over the last 6-7 years, I've seen how important of a role federal governments can play in municipalities, and I look forward to bringing that experience that I've gained with infrastructure, environment, community engagement to Ottawa.
You were not afraid to criticize the federal Liberals when you were deputy mayor of the city. What does that mean when it comes to this relationship? And now that you're on this team, how will you represent, I guess, the GTA and the 905?
Well, I'm looking forward to bringing that lived experience as a municipal politician. You know, in many cases, municipalities are beholden to the federal government. They have an important role, in particular in funding infrastructure, and that's what I'm really hoping that I can push in Ottawa.
You've been a popular city councillor, one of the deputy mayors as well. Why did you want to run in this election, and why did you want to run for Mark Bernie?
So in February, when I saw President Trump and President Zelensky in the White House, I felt sad. And I am a happy person. And just to think that the state of politics has become to a point where all we see is negativity and people talking so disrespectfully to each other, I really felt like it was time for me to think about how I could bring that positive voice to politics at the federal level, and I'm looking forward to doing that.
Jennifer, you were saying that you had a lot of experience in terms of infrastructure, the things that you brought at City Council. What are the things that you hope to start to bring forward once you move into the nation's capital?
Well, one of the things that I'm most proud of at my time on City Council was that we worked with the federal government to create the Natural Infrastructure Fund. I'm really hoping that I can champion the Natural Infrastructure Fund again, and so that we can really get that investment we need in ravines and things like flood protection, and I'm looking forward to bringing that to support the residents of Ajax.
What are some of the things that the residents of Ajax have told you that they want to see change up at Parliament Hill, and what are some of the first things that you're going to action on behalf of the people of Ajax?
Well, one of the things that we hear most at the doors is how important it is for affordable housing. We all love our children, but we don't want them to live at home forever. We want them to have that pathway into having their own homes, into moving out, into being successful. We know that affordability is something that many people are struggling with right now, and I really do believe that the Canada Strong Plan under Mark Carney will help with that.
The results overall, it looks like a Liberal minority is in the cards. Is that disappointing?
I'm really happy that I have my seat here in Ajax and this wonderful opportunity to work with others across the country. And wherever we end up at the end of the night, I look forward to building bridges, to finding consensus.
Great interview, and of course they're having fun out there. They're very happy with the results. An interesting note before we talk about Oshawa, which we're going to go to, Pierre Poilievre is really having a tough time in his own riding. He's losing by quite a bit. He's been in there since, 2004?
2004, 21 years.
So 21 years he's been there, and it's not a good sign for him right now. So the future of his career is hanging in the balance.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Oshawa. Rhonda Kirkland looks like she's got that one done. The Conservative person, and Isaac Ransom, who ran a really good race behind her. Chris, tell us about Rhonda.
Sure. Rhonda Kirkland, who is your newest MP, Oshawa. She is the Conservative candidate. She'll be taking over for Colin Carey, who had been representing the riding for quite some time. I've seen Colin Carey first represented Oshawa riding in 2004. We have had Conservatives representing Oshawa now for 21 years. So quite the run there in the former NDP riding. Back when Ed Broadbent, he really dominated this riding for many years in the 80s. Rhonda Kirkland, we talked about it earlier, but just a reminder, she's a certified educational therapist with over 20 years of experience providing therapy for individuals with learning disabilities, dyslexia. She has a bachelor's degree from the National Institute for Learning Development, a speaker, a trainer, an advocate for early intervention strategies in education, born and raised in Oshawa. Worked to advance federal legislation focused on human trafficking and victims' rights. A longtime political advocate with 3 decades of involvement in both local and national campaigns. A strong advocate for affordability, safety, and quality of life for families and seniors. And as we mentioned earlier, she is a single mother of 2, now moving to Ottawa, where she will represent the Oshawa riding in the House of Commons. So congratulations to Rhonda Kirkland.
Great. So we're kind of waiting for one more riding, and that's Northumberland Clark. That's the one that's sort of up in the air. All the others seem to have been decided. I wanted to ask you, because you've got a wealth of information about people. We talked about Pierre Poilievre. We talked about Jagmeet Singh. We haven't really touched on Mark Carney, and we're hoping that he would actually come on live and do a press conference, but that doesn't seem to be happening.